Before this video starts, I really quickly want to say that you should go and check out this video, or this, I don't know which side it's on, maybe this side? Go check that video out. I'm doing a 48-hour charity livestream at the end of January, and it's going to be good fun, and by good fun I mean terrifying. Anyway, back to the video. Or into the video, I guess. The 2010s were an interesting decade. It's the first decade in which I was able to make my own tech buying decisions. I got my first ever smartphone that I actually wanted in the Samsung Galaxy S3. I got the first phone I actually paid for myself with the OnePlus One, and I also got an S7 Edge, which, whew, I didn't make many terrible buying decisions technology-wise in the 2010s, but that's probably because I didn't hit 18 until 2015, and by then we were already halfway through a decade. That didn't stop me from buying this. You see, I most certainly made some great purchasing decisions, but this is definitely not one of them. This is one of those things that was great in concept, but in execution fell flat on so many levels. You probably don't know what this is, so allow me to explain. This is a Glace Clock, made by a company called Glace. Crazy that, innit? They were an Indiegogo I backed in September of 2016, and at least I got my product, I guess. This promised to be a device that revolutionised wall clocks, and idealistic George loved the idea of the Glace Clock. Allow me to show you bits of their promotional video that explains just why I was so excited for this thing.
Let's see how Jeff uses his Glace Clock. Connect Glace Clock to your fitness tracker and have it show how well you slept, or didn't sleep. How many steps you've taken, or haven't taken. Check what the weather is like so you know what to wear before going outside.
As someone who in 2016 was working on maximising my smart product stuff, I had a smartwatch, I didn't know LG Watch R at the time, but I had a smartwatch, my phone, and my Bluetooth headphones, and I felt like smart tech was the place to be. I thought this made sense. I don't have any wall clocks in this room currently. So I was like, oh cool, it's something I can add to my home office and it'll make for a decent smart device. Clearly it didn't do that. You see, in my opinion, the issue wasn't the device itself, though this thing does have its kinks. The battery lasts 3 days. It's rattly for some reason. I think the battery's loose in there, which isn't great. Signal is decent, and the LEDs could be a bit brighter and a bit darker. In dark situations they're too bright, and in bright situations they're too dark. And most importantly, as far as I'm concerned, you can't really see the hands at night. It'd be nice if these lit up somehow. And there's not enough contrast between the background and these hands specifically on this colour. So there are a fair few hardware issues, but there are significantly more software issues. You see, as is normally the case on a device manufactured by a startup, they had an app for it, and the app was iOS exclusive for the first few months. The only reason I got this device is I said I had an Android device, which I did, and then when they were shipping them out, they made very obvious that they were going to prioritise iOS users. So I emailed the company and was like, hey, I have a YouTube channel, you may want me to make a video on it, and they sent one out because of that. And to be fair, though, the Android app was non-existent. The iOS app was surprisingly decent. You could add calendars to it, which would act as rings around this clock, and you could also set timers, and whenever you'd get a phone call, the name would flash up on here, and it was one of those things that had genuine potential. And as I got to use it more and more with an iPad specifically for the sake of iOS, I was more and more excited for an Android app. Except when that Android app came, it was atrocious. It was just so bad. I'm pretty sure it's still rated 1.4 stars. Let me check. There are a couple of small issues that for me were relatively non-issues, but for a regular user would be a big deal. For example, to update the clock, they didn't have an updater built into their Android app, so you had to download a Bluetooth sideloader, connect to it, and sideload the update directly to the clock. Which isn't the kind of update you should be suggesting for people to do. And that was just the basic functionality, connecting a calendar to it. On top of that, with the battery life being so terrible, you probably wanted to have it plugged in all the time, but the cable is white. It's very long, to be fair, it's a perfect length, and you could probably plug it in effectively anywhere in the same room. But with it being bright white, especially with this space grey coloured clock, I forget what it was called at the time, it's just no. You could tell. You either had it on a bright wall and the clock stood out, or you had it on a dark wall and the cable stood out. And also, the cable came straight out the bottom. There wasn't like a 45, like it wasn't, let me grab a cable. I mean, I'm not even going to mention the fact it has a barrel connector, but the fact that it came straight down meant that you weren't able to hide it at all. You'd be able to see this bottom part. At least if it was angled, you'd be able to plug it in and then like drill a hole in a wall and have it run through that. But nope, that's not an option. You have to see this. This was a device that I had hoped upon hope that would revolutionise having a clock. I have never had a clock in this office, and I still don't. But I used this for like 2, maybe 3 weeks until plugging it in like 3 days ago, and it's just been sat on the side, constantly complaining about how low the battery is. And so I just had it like plugged in, just sitting there, so I don't have to hear it. If I click this button, you'll see where that display is. So it's got like the indicators around the edge, and then it's got a little display here, and then there's more display around here. Let me grab an iPad and show you. I mean, the saddest part is the fact that the app is completely abandoned at this point. The last update on iOS was 7 months ago, and when it first came out on Android, for the first sort of 3 to 4 months, there would be weekly updates, which made me really excited for the potential, but that hasn't seen an update in over a year. I just discovered the app is so ill looked after that you can't actually sign in anymore. Like normally, you can only sign in via a Google account, like their regular form no longer works, so you can't create a Glance account. But if I go into settings real quick, let me just up this brightness. Brightness, turn off auto and set it to max. So this is 100% brightness. You can see the rings that go around the sides. Obviously, I'm currently quite heavily lit. This is actually reasonably bright and is reasonably viewable. But if you're in a dark room, then you can't see the hands. If I set a timer for 2 hours, you can see this is where the hour hand would go. Currently, what's the wrong way? Currently, this isn't like running properly, but you'd get to there and oh, hang on, no, I was spinning it the right way. So you'd get to there, and that's how. Whoopsies! Oh, I broke it. And the other thing you get, for example, is weather. This is currently, if I move this hand out of the way. God, I'm gonna have to do this, aren't I? Oh God, there goes that hand again. But yeah, you can see it says it's 9 degrees, and you can set these up to show up however you want. If I turn on hands adjustment to like fix the positioning of the hands now that they've come off a couple of times, you can see that it works. It's fine. Like it functions as a clock. It's just not particularly great. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, guys. It's just a shame because it's a device that I thought had a lot of potential, and I think still does. If only it didn't have a battery life that was so short and software support that was so terrible. It shows that just because you have a good idea and you can bring a device to market doesn't mean it's something that will be functional in the long term. It kind of reminds me of those little Anki bots. I know that Vector has been saved specifically, but now that the company has gone under, the other robots are basically useless, which is a shame because they were really cute, but that's where we are now. Also, this is what it now thinks is 12 o'clock. Clearly it's not. So sure, the 2010s was a decade where I made some pretty decent buying decisions, specifically with the OnePlus One. Like, that wasn't the best phone ever, but it was my favourite phone of the 2010s. Just what it represented and where OnePlus is now compared to where it was all those years ago. But that doesn't mean all my purchasing decisions were great. And the Glace Clock definitely shows that off. It's a device that I paid $99 for, with $15 in shipping, and that was supposedly 50% off. This device is currently being sold on the Glace Clock website for $149, and even then, just don't do it. The app hasn't been updated in forever, the battery life is iffy at best, and it's just not great overall. It's the one core part of a wall clock, especially as it's a device that won't be moving much. It'll be in one position. Just make it heavier and stick a bigger battery in it. They did use a line on their website which I found completely hilarious, and it's give some definition to your walls with this smart piece of art. I'm not sure I agree with either of those words. Smart, maybe. Art, definitely not. It can tell you the time though, as long as it's not dark, and as long as it's plugged in. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to hit the like button, and please make sure to subscribe. It's been incredible seeing the growth over the last couple of months. If you didn't, I'm not quite sure what you're doing here. However, You can check out more videos, and more importantly, we have a 48-hour charity live stream coming up at the end of this month. So if you're around at the end of January or the start of February, click the first link in the description to find out more about that live stream. It's to raise money for special effect, and it should be a really fun time. Just not for me. See you guys next week.